I'm so excited to be here, you guys, as we're talking about Nahro 101. I think that, besides just the three of us that are supposed to be specifically on this panel, I think that I'm speaking, James and Megan, a lot to you guys, and maybe throughout this session, I'll get to learn more about you and what your work life is like, where you're at. I know you're both from San Antonio, but how we can help to connect you even more with Nahro, the organization, so you can grow your career in our industry, because we want you to stay. We want you to stay in this industry. And so besides us, you also have Barbara on the phone and Millette, who are amazing, amazing housers from your state and have also served nationally and done some really great work. So I think we're going to just be able to have an opportunity for just some conversation and discussion and learn from each other and hopefully answer any questions you may have. My goal is always to get people absolutely connected to Nahro. It is like family for me, and I bleed Nahro. Obviously, I probably should. Otherwise, I probably shouldn't be serving as your president. It should be absolutely at the core of who I am, and it is. So thank you for having me. And I don't know, Michael, if you wanted to give Beverly and Yvette also a chance, so I'll pass it off then to Beverly to do a welcome, dear.
Welcome. I thought that was good. I thought that was probably all they want to hear from me. But anyway, we're glad to have you here. Like Sunny said, we want to keep you here. It is family, Texas, and then eventually you move on into the regional, which is the 7 states, Southwest, and that becomes an extended family. So every conference is really more a reunion. There's hugs, there's high fives, there's how's your grandkids? Did your kid get out of that speeding ticket? I mean, we share so much and we're so close. We care. So I think that is one of the best things about this organization. We have our legislative ties, our networking and all, but the family is really what makes this group unique to me. So Yvette, I'll let you speak.
Well, welcome to everybody, and I'm really excited to be sitting on this panel. Nahro for me is just a great place to be, and I have to say that through my connections with Nahro, I've been able to advance my career. So if you're just a new person coming to Nahro like James, and I'm not sure if Megan is, Texas Nahro is the place for you, and we're here to help you grow and to help you learn and give you that hand up whenever you need some help.
Awesome. So am I the one that gets to ask all the questions in this session here, Michael?
No.
No, I'm not. No, that was a resounding no. Oh man, I thought for once I was going to get some real grit details. So okay, I'll just sit down here until I'm asked to speak next.
No, you can feel free to speak.
You need to ask him if you can control muting everybody.
Yeah. There's another participant joined that just says director. Would you like to unmute and confess who you are, director?
It's like the Masked Singer. Tell us who you are.
Apparently it's still going to be a masks director.
That's fair.
We'll just have to
but
wait.
don't feel free to unmute, butt in, ask questions, stop. Like I said, we're here to answer your questions, to tell you the pros and cons, what we've learned the hard way. Really any questions you have, we're happy to answer them, but don't feel like you have to be formal and type them or chat or whatever. You are more than welcome to unmute and butt in at any time.
I have a question, and so I've been with the Housing Authority 26 years, and more involved with Nahro the last maybe 10 years of my career, but kind of curious, why is it that when I need something or think about it, what is it about Nahro that I don't think of Nahro first? And I want to know what I have to do that. You know what I mean? So I know in Texas we compete with Second Housing Association. I don't necessarily think of them either. What I do think about, well, I mean, I do think about the people I've met, right? So I don't have a problem calling Barbara and saying, because she's, 45 minutes from me, hey, I need this information and whatever, and she gets it, so she'll answer me. But besides the connections, what is it I have to do to put Nahro first, I guess, in my thought process as a resource that's besides the people I already know? Like, does that make sense? And I'm asking for two reasons. One, I'm on member services, and it's for Nahro, and I sometimes wonder if we need to answer that question in order to get a good hard look at what our membership relies on Nahro for. And I know I've rely on them for this housing network that I rely on to call and ask. I mean, we all know we call up there and talk to different people about what's going on legislatively, or they send out emails, and so you keep this kind of focus. But I'm just curious. So Sunny, maybe this question is more for you than anybody else, but how do we get people like me to think of Nahro first?
That's a loaded question.
Sorry.
But first of all, I think one of the things that you did hit on, because Millette, you said that there's people that just are even in this panel that you think of to call, right?
Yeah.
So it does go to connections. I mean,
right.
I've emailed Barbara too, by the way. And been like, hey, I've got some questions. That is one of the beautiful things as we meet people, and we ask them questions about their organization and what their role is. So I don't necessarily maybe think Nahro, but it's because of Nahro that I have those connections, because it's given me the opportunity to meet those people. I had a question about preservation and historic preservation. And I thought, I know Sally Stang was telling me about a crazy building that she was doing when she was in Tucson. I think I'm going to call her and get some pointers on that. It's really about the pieces in conversation with people where you hear something that they've done, and then, or someone in conversation has mentioned someone who has done something. So it's almost like the 6 degrees of separation. That's why I had emailed Barbara, was because someone said, you really need to email her. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. And so the first thing is we strengthen the network of connections for everybody that is in our membership. And that starts at the state level. And that's why you immediately kind of think of, okay, my state folks, because I've talked to them at a conference before. I know that they may have something. And it goes beyond just the person that's maybe 40 minutes down the road, because with those connections that are across your whole state, then you can start to think about, maybe I could call that person. And then that expands regionally and it expands nationally. And I think, though, you're exactly right. And I think you're in a position, Millette, from what I hear, to be really guiding this piece of the discussion for member services, right?
Right.
To be like, why don't people think Nahro first? And I drank the Kool-Aid, I'll tell you, obviously 15 years ago. And so I know that when I'm thinking of training, I go first to Nahro, and I'm like, who's on the training list there? I know who some really good trainers are, and I know what we have in curriculum that we offer. And so I go there. I think Nahro first for my training. If Nahro doesn't have it, then I'll go look somewhere else. But you can be guaranteed, and this was way before I ran to be even senior VP, you can be guaranteed that the first thing I'm going to do is go look to Nahro, okay, for my professional development, advocacy, all of that. One of the things that I always want people to remember when I'm saying think Nahro first, and I usually talk about it when it comes to PD, right, is because there are a lot of qualified trainers out there, but we have to remember the fact that some of those qualified trainers are for-profit entities. And so when they offer a training, someone is getting a new car because they met their quota in trainings that year. And that's just business. I get that. When you do your training, when your training dollars are spent with Nahro, what's going to happen is we can pay for an advocacy person on the Hill to speak on your behalf. We can pay for policy people who are going to write the policy documents that we need. Especially to me, the most important piece is what happens on the Hill. And we fund that with where we spend our dollars. And so to me, I'm always thinking about my agency and what's most important for my agency. Well, it's legislative action. So therefore, everything for me starts with Nahro, because legislative action, they're the ones that are speaking for me and arguing for me. But, you know, I'm going to challenge you, Melinda. I'm going to throw that right back at you. I'm just going to challenge you as your position in member services to answer the question, because I see we've got folks on here that are newer to our organization. Why should Megan be thinking about Nahro? Why should Nahro matter to her, right?
If I was answering the question, even like my first year, you know, I would have said that it was because you need that network of support and understanding when something comes out. A lot of, and I'm not a small housing authority at all. I'm what they call a little big one. So, you know, we're not exactly a middle one. But what happens is, back then, you know, the ED would give you this chunk of paper that came in the mail about some reg or something, and I'm the one who's having to read the 65-page document and then trying to have it make sense. And a lot of times it didn't. I mean, it just did not make sense. But what I found was, and again, it was a state chapter, that was a topic of discussion. So it was right on point. You know, the topic came up as soon as this issue came up. Or they wanted, or HUD was still in a comment period. And so that helped broaden my thinking, and then helped me be more creative about what could or could not be done with that possible notification or whatever it was. Generally speaking, I like Nahro the most because I always feel like they're the most experienced advocates for us on the Hill. I don't like politicking. That's not my favorite thing to do. I'm not really quite sure how I ended up in this position, because that's like not my skill set. I usually like to tell them what I think they're doing wrong, which is not how you get anywhere with politicians. And so I just always have been very grateful that somebody else puts it together so nicely, and then points out the things I would have said, but you're not doing this, and you're not doing this, and you're not doing that. So I rely on that approach, I guess, from Nahro. And so I guess in my mind, it would align itself with your comment about the legislative. The people, of course, I think are the first thing. But I just don't always think that that's what, from a membership standpoint, I think they like to think about things like, well, you know, how are my dues being spent, and how does that benefit my agency when I have to sell a cost to the board, so to speak. And so, you know, they don't really see a point in advocacy, because they want you to concentrate wholeheartedly on what's happening here, and they don't always think beyond
right. But
right here.
When you're trying to sell the cost, especially this year, this year, you say, look at the CARES Act money that was deposited into our bank accounts. I can tell you from my work on the back end of that, the significant work on that, and the reason why you got that was because of Nahro's advocacy for your need. And so whenever someone's saying, well, does it really, you know, why should I pay the dues? Man, this year we can absolutely point to that and say, here's, look at what we pay, look at what we got. Right? Very small piece of that puzzle of what you paid. So,
and I've been very grateful for that money. We're opting to try to do some educational things as well as some health things. And so it's just a lot more involved than I thought. It'd be nice to be in a district where it's only one school district, but it's not, you know, so, but again, I think going back to the question, I think that's where it starts for me. And it started for me that same exact way. Like if you hear someone like Gene Reed or Mike Gerber, and of course they're Texas people, but when they talk legislatively to those politicians, that I kind of think, oh my God, there's such a waste of time. I don't even know why they're here. Like, I don't know how they got elected. They put that don't say anything like that, but they put it very nicely and then keep things focused. So I've always appreciated that kind of advocacy on my behalf. And so that's been the primary thing when I've talked about it. I just want to make sure that I've asked that question of everyone I can think of so that the answer, which I think it has a lot of components, is succinct by the time, you know, we have to turn around and face it.
Great.
Yeah.
I think I'm along with Sunny, and I drank the Nahro Kool-Aid about 11 years ago. And for me, I was in a really small, I would say like a micro mini housing authority. And so when I looked for guidance and leadership, I looked to Nahro. I looked at the state level, I looked at the regional, and then the national level. And so I've been fortunate in the housing authorities that I've worked in that I've been able to participate actively at each level. And, you know, I've sat on the small agency task force for several years. I think I was like the go-to for small agency in Texas, Nahro. And so I've moved on to other committees, but when it comes to professionalism and training, I think you find that more at the national level and at the regional level and at the state level versus any other housing association. And what I like about Texas Nahro is that no matter what the size of housing authority you come from, there's always room for you at the table. And your words and your questions are never looked upon as being, you know, insignificant. We look at them and treat everybody as an equal. And then there's the problem solving, you know. Maybe you've hit a wall on something, you don't know how to get there, and there's other people that are sitting at the table with you that are willing to share their knowledge and experience. So as a newcomer, these folks down here from San Antonio, I would encourage you guys to take the plunge and join committees, because that's where you're going to really start your networking. That's where you're going to really start your knowledge and your engagement with the Nahros. And then, you know, and take every opportunity that your housing authority gives you so that you can get more involved. You know, I understand Milette's point that sometimes we wonder, you know, why should I go here or there? But if you're young and you're trying to build your career, this is probably the place that you want to start at. This is where you want to go. And I mean, it's a great organization. Like I said, I've been doing this for 11 years. My involvement with Nahro, I've been executive director for about 11 years, and in the housing industry for about 21. I started as an intake clerk, and I have worked my way up. So there's a lot of opportunity when you join Texas Nahro, and I encourage everyone to try to get as involved as they possibly can.
And receptionist in the house. I started as at the front desk. Very, very proud of that fact. Very proud.
I did intake for
I have done
a year or two.
I was a social worker. I did the drug elimination grants.
I did maintenance half a day and the office half a day when I first started full time.
So I loved, it looks like Nadia asked a question. And can you tell us a little bit more about what the responsibilities are for different committee members and what kind of commitment are we talking about? So, you know, I can speak to national, and then maybe our cohorts here on the phone will talk about region and state because it's different at each level. But I can tell you that nationally, if you're able to serve on a national committee, and one of the things that I always tell, especially folks who are wanting to learn to grow their leadership, maybe national is obviously going to be where you start. You want to dive in at state first, and then from state, you oftentimes then get recognized for your hard work, because it is work, and then go to region, and then on up to national. When you become a member of national committee, you commit to, you know, to go to conferences. There used to be 3 a year, and we're moving to just 2 a year. And I think that there may even be some idea of, you know, blended down the road. So you may be able to participate. I'm not sure what it's going to look like down the road. On the occasions that you have a reason that you can't necessarily travel, there could be, you know, exemptions for that. But you do have to participate. The committee meetings are full day meetings. We like, you know, if you are serving on a committee, that you attend the conference, because that's kind of like walking the walk, right? That people see you in the meetings, and that you're supporting the organization by attending the conference. And so it's a full day meeting where, depending on what your committee is, the work that you're charged with, you're going to have an agenda that you're going to work through on that whole day. Now, it's not just, though, what would be the twice a day or twice a year meetings. There's also, you have phone conferences, and a really successful committee will have a conference call once a month. And there may be a subcommittee maybe that you would be on. So conference calls is where you really can be diving in and doing some good work between conferences. And this year, we've had to really strengthen up our conference calls, because we haven't had the opportunity to work face to face. So there's been some really serious work that's happened on those conference calls. So what is it that you're actually talking about if you serve at the national level? You're talking about, you know, going to 2 conferences a year that would move around the United States. One of them is always in DC. The other one, Millet's, and actually there's a couple of you that are on that committee. They decide where we're going to travel to for upcoming conferences. You know, we were supposed to be this month in Orlando. And so it just depends upon where that group decides that we'll be going. And you attend those, and then you participate in the conference calls. On a much more local level, though, I'm going to ask your fearless leaders that have been doing it for a while on the call, that are from state and regional, to talk to you about what that looks like and the time commitment.
And that really varies from committee to committee. Our main committees are our professional development, member services, CR&D, commissioners. What's my other one, girls?
Housing.
Yes, they vary. I'm on member services, so I can speak more for that one. But preceding a conference, we have fundraisers. So that committee, outside the regular meetings, is going to be working on arts and crafts, making game boards, coordinating with vendors how they're going to interact during the games. We call ourselves the hostess with the mostest. So there's some, of course, it's all volunteers. You know, if you don't like that, you don't have to sign up for it. We're gathering table decorations, just whatever that committee needs to do. Awards and scholarship, they're going to be meeting, going over the application process, what needs to be changed. Just like we talked today, next year for scholarships, they may not be able to get the documents they need for the school. So it's a constant monitoring the processes. Then those committees will score the things. So that's time consuming, but it's temporary. It's just during that week of scoring. PD, they may be asked, that's professional development, outside the committee meetings where they're trying to decide what we're going to offer at conferences, what we're going to offer standalone. They may be asked to monitor some classes, to watch a speaker, to sit in on something and see what they think of the training. Because we certainly don't want to bring a training to our conference that's, that's not good for the membership. Yvette, I'll let you speak on the other committees, because I've just been more.
Well, I happen to be the Senior Vice President for Professional Development for the Southwest region, and I also sit on the National Committee for Professional Development. For me, professional development is my passion. I think I've been sitting on these committees like forever, but I love it. I mean, I love doing it. I think we need, I think it's just really vital to the organization. And how much time you put into it is really going to be up to the level that you're at. At the state level, when I was chair for the PD committee, I think we only met during conference time. And during that time, we would set up the agendas, we would give input to the speakers, and then we would moderate sessions. And it's the same thing at the regional level. We have great support from the service office. They're really good at helping us and telling us what sessions work, what sessions don't work. And again, it's how much time. Once you get to the national level, I am finding that there's just a little bit more work involved, because not only do you have the national committee that you sit with, you break into subcommittees. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting today and I missed it because I'm doing this, but they task you to do stuff. So for me, it's really time management. A lot of times maybe you might have to do that after working hours, but if you can manage your time, fit in an hour, you know, in your work schedule to take care of something, you know, it's really up to you. You know, if you find it, whether it's too much or not enough. But it's great. I mean, I enjoy it. I think professional development for me is the bread and butter of the organization. And I've sat on other committees, housing committees and other ones, but the one I always gravitate back to is the PD committee.
I
Thanks
think
so
that there's, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Nadia.
I was just saying thank you so much. That's a very helpful information.
I think that one of the things that we want to always, you know, I always encourage when I'm talking to folks who are interested in diving into service, first of all, we love that. I mean, like, we so encourage it because that's part of how you really become connected to the organization. But I always encourage you to, if you have an interest, talk with your director or your department manager first, because you can't just sign up and then come back and your director be like, oh, we can't support that financially, right? And so you want to know the full ins and outs of what the commitment is that you're wanting to step into that role, and then present it to the department manager or your director and ask for their support in doing that. So I really think too that that it's about the connections, you know, and the connections that you're going to get. So the amount of service that you put in, you're going to get things back as a reward for that your agency will benefit from. You know, when we were talking with my agency about me becoming the national president of Nahro, you know, my board was like, well, you're going to be gone a lot. You're going to be doing Nahro stuff a lot. And what is the gain for the agency? And although they didn't say it that way because they were very, very supportive, but I needed to show them that there was going to be value. There's going to be value in allowing your director to do this. And I can tell you, it's come back in leaps and bounds, because the things that you learn about when you're at a conference and you come back and you're like, oh, you know, if we put this in this grant application, or, oh, so-and-so says that this application is coming out. Or, you know, I can tell you, Nahro's mentored me in developing a really strong relationship with a pretty powerful senator that happens to be from Idaho. So because of that relationship, you know, he's made phone calls for me. That senator has made phone calls for me and for my agency. So there have been benefits that have far outweighed the cost analysis that you might do on being able to serve. But you need to be able to show your manager or your director that there's going to be value. One of my pet peeves, and I'll just share with you as Nahro president, you know, conferences, in my opinion, they're fun. We have a great time at night. I mean, you know, there's lots of, you know, kicking and having a good time and laughing and dancing, and but it's not just a trip, because you have to remember that your agency is paying for you to be there. And so you have an obligation. You know, if I go out and back in the younger days, back in my much younger days, you know, it wasn't uncommon. Like, I was like, hey, I'm here with my friends from all across the country, and I'd go out until 2 or 3 in the morning and have a great time. But I also knew that it was my responsibility to have my butt in a chair at 8 a.m. because I'm expected to bring value back to my agency. And so I want you to always remember, it's not just about the trip. The trip is fun, but it's about what is the value that you're adding back to your agency in the investment that they're putting into you. So don't forget that piece of it. I just think that that's really important to remember. James says, I was wondering what kind of research partnerships and academic partnerships there are at the national level in housing policy research. James, you're like, you came from College Station. I should have been prepared for that. Oh my goodness. So, you know, that I love that question, because one of the things that we're currently exploring is we had previously had like this education task force that looked at what are we doing, because beyond just sticks and bricks, what are we doing to ensure that the families that we serve are being given the tools that they need, you know, in health, in education, in employment, and how can Nahro create those partnerships? And we're always exploring those partnerships. And right now we're looking at possibly getting, maybe a VISTA volunteer to come in and really take a look at the education piece, because we know that there's so much there, but because staff is limited with their time, time is a valuable resource that there's just not a lot of. And so we're looking at bringing someone in specifically who can address the partnerships that need to be explored and expanded. We currently have a CEO who is incredibly well connected. She is so well connected. And so we're wanting to be able to kind of utilize those connections and create stronger partnerships. As far as research, I was asked this summer to come and speak to, and I'm going to get it completely wrong, the Center for, I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm going to try, but it was a poverty research group. And I was asked to come and speak to them because of representing Nahro. And when I'm not talking, I'm going to go Google it so I can tell you before we're done. So Nahro is really looked to as an expert in the industry for a lot of these organizations. And so they come to us in order to be able to garner information, because we're the hosts of that information. We are looking to explore more partnerships, and especially utilizing research in those partnerships.
And also Nahro has one of my interns from our housing authority that is presently interning there. She's getting her master's degree in policy. That's and she, because after serving with us, really wanted to kind of focus on housing policy. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she comes out of that, and the kind of research that she'll do for her master's degree and hopefully on to her doctorate. So
that's awesome.
You even gave space, let's put it that way, to an intern.
Yes, and that's through the scholarship program too that we do that as well. And I just looked it up, James. I was asked to come and speak to Center on Budget and Policy Priorities because of their interest in what is happening in housing authorities. And so we are continually working on ways that we can help to partner in that regard. Harvard each year does an analysis on poverty, and this year we partnered with them and helped to even fund that research that was going on, so that way we could utilize it in the documents that we were creating as well.
Sunny, don't you have on staff some policy directors and writers there at Nahro?
Good. That is such a good slow pitch that I've had, because that's true. Yeah, we actually have 3 policy writers on staff. Georgie, who is speaking at your conference, he's our director of policy, and he has 2 staff members that are continually working on writing policy, interpreting policy from the federal government, as well as creating documents so we can make recommendations. I mean, one of the calls that I just came off of today, right before this one, was a call saying, probably, we should be involved in making proposals for a re-envisioning of HUD, because, since HUD was created, it's just HUD. And we need to kind of think about, like, how could they function differently and what role could we play in that? So yes, we're also looking at large documents like that. Be on the lookout for, we have a housing going forward in the future post-election white paper, that no matter who wins the election, we're going to be sending it their way of what we think policies need to be looked at and reevaluated. There's a lot of policies currently on diversity, equity, and inclusion that, quite frankly, are outdated. I've said many times that, a lot of housing authorities have a 20-year look back period on criminal history. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. And that's something, for example, we have opportunity just ourselves to create policy changes in our agency, but what other policies can we change nationally? So Yvette, thank you for throwing that one at me, because yeah, we have a whole department on policy.
I think what's unique when you're a member of Nahro is that a lot of times they do ask agencies for their input. And I think that's really neat that somebody from a really small agency or a medium or large scaled agency would be able to give input on something that's going to affect the entire industry nationally. So that's, I think, is a benefit of being a member of Nahro.
Yeah, I mean, they just had a survey that was sent out that was, during COVID, how many interim recertifications have you had to do? What has your HAP amount gone up because of income decreases in our households? The reason why they're asking for that information is because as a future maybe act, I think, what are they talking about? Like maybe a HEALS Act, who knows if it's going to happen or not, but we're wanting to be able to supply that data so that we can say, here's how many households that we serve were impacted by COVID. And we can tell that by how many interim decreases you had to do, correct? And so we're going to utilize that data to be able to say, here's where our households have been impacted. So that's an exact example, is that the surveys, how we participate in them, then how that data translates into action on the Hill.
And everything y'all have talked about all ties back into the value of Nahro, because as you're new, you're building your career, you're growing. If you get a certification course, and whether it's your director or you're looking at advancing or applying for a different position or a different housing authority, that Nahro certificate has a lot of credibility behind it. Anybody in this field knows that if you got that handout from Nahro, it's been reviewed. It's not another director that's been there so long, they're now asking them to train. So there's a very high credibility behind Nahro, and I think that's a big value for training, for going to conferences. If you go to a Nahro conference, there's a credibility. Almost every trainer at the end of their class will give out their phone number. So sometimes it's, my daddy always said, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you can call that person and say, Mr. Banks, I was in your class in Orlando and, I didn't understand this, or could you re-explain this? Or, even I've got a unique situation. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you, they're going to answer probably more than that, probably 9 3/4 out of 10. But it is who you meet and where you go and the credibility. So Nahro,
go ahead.
First.
Nahro trainings are actually, when you get a certification, it's actually credentialed by a national credentialing organization. We're the only housing industry group that has credentialed certifications. And let me tell you, I've written one of those exams, and they are reviewed by an independent body for credentialing before they're rolled out. And it's really difficult to write an exam, because back in the old days, and I'm dating myself, but back in the old days, you would do an exam and there was one question that you knew, not a chance, right? Because it was multiple choice. There were 4 choices. One of them, not even a chance, like it was something off of Sesame Street was the answer. The second one was, you're probably going, yeah, that doesn't really sound like it either. And there were 2 that's like, it could be. And you cannot, through credentialing, you can't have an exam that is written like that. All 4 answers have to be credible answers, which does make the exam super difficult, but that's to maintain the integrity of credentialing. And so that's when you have those letters behind your name, they are, Beverly, you're exactly right. They're very, very respected and recognized. And there's another question in the queue. So Millette, because you guys, Millette and Beverly, I know that the 2 of you are on member services. Maybe it's a question for you guys, huh?
Yeah, it says here about the application process. We did meet. I'm on the awards committee, a subcommittee. We've been working really hard to move awards away from names of individuals and more about what it is. We find that the awards that were pretty clear in the title what it was about, we would get more awards for. So we want to make sure that we are doing that. If you're asking me when the application process will start, I can tell you we're still going to proceed forward, whether we anticipate having a conference or not in Washington, and so forth. So we're still going to be getting those out. I don't have my notes right in front of me, and honestly, I don't want to show you my desk. So it's on my desk somewhere.
Applications close, what is today? Application deadline is tomorrow.
Exactly.
For individual awards.
Yeah. Or national.
Yes.
For national,
Yep.
and
Now,
so,
Texas,
and obviously,
Nahro
South, I mean, each region will have their awards start and end dates for the applications to be submitted, and then state as well. So I believe that the service officers for each region should have those posted on their websites, because Nahro has theirs as well posted on their website. So
yeah, and
that
Lisa
answers your
Garcia said
question.
this morning, Texas is still looking at sending the applications out in November with a January deadline.
Mhm.
So even whether we have the conference or how it works out next year, I think Texas will stick with the deadlines that we've always used. So those will probably be coming out in November. I feel like Southwest Nahro will do the same. I'm the chairman of that committee, so I feel like we will stick with our same deadlines, and then we're still up in the air whether to hold them. We don't want to mellow them out. We want the people to get the recognition that they deserve for the awards. So whether it's virtual or how it's held, it's still out for discussion, but I think the deadlines will stay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I know that that was a very open-ended question, but I just wanted to take advantage of the opportunity while you're all here. Our agency usually applies for the state level, the regional, and the national awards.
Mhm.
And I know COVID has just changed everything in terms of timelines, so just wanted to take advantage. Thank you.
If I recall correctly, San Antonio was on the stage last year with like this whole string of plaques that you were all holding up there. So kudos to you all. You obviously do some great work and put together great applications. So well done.
Thank you for the opportunity to recognize our staff and our different programs. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just fabulous. So how are we doing? What other questions y'all have?
You know, I'll go ahead and for the San Antonio people, the board did vote this morning at the board meeting to not have any conferences the first 6 months, in-person conferences, the first 6 months of 2021. So the April conference will again be a virtual conference. Awards will have to meet again. Everybody will have to meet and replan, re-strategize, figure out how to go forward with it. But just for your information, the April conference that we so look forward to will be virtual again.
Makes me sad, but it's, you know, it's where we're at right now.
But
You guys can,
There's some benefit to that.
there
I
are.
think there are. We've got a lot of people that can't travel anyway, so on a regular basis, so this suddenly becomes an affordable option. It certainly cuts costs down to have a virtual conference, so we might see more profit just on the larger scale. So I you know, sometimes the worst things force you to look at things uniquely, and certainly to have the support to do that is always helpful. So I think that in the long run, you just never know what it's going to look like, and we got to try. That's our spirit. So
You can all be guaranteed. You can all be guaranteed that when I see you, I'm going to tackle you with hugs, though.
It does make it, I agree with Millette. I have like 5 or 6 people registered for this conference, whereas usually I have 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, you know, there's classes they want that kind of hit and miss. And if you do it virtual, you can do that. Like I have different people going to different classes, but then they can do their regular work the rest of the day. So yeah, it's much more affordable, and travel is time consuming.
Well, and also at this conference anyway, they're taping it. So if we're attending this, and I wish and I also wanted to hear Georgie,
Right.
well, because it's taped, I can go back and do that. And I think it's an example that both our state, regional, and national groups can look at, because that's certainly, if we do a blended thing in the future, that would be an additional source of income.
Well, you know, it's when we did the national conference for summer, Normally it's just myself, because we're a smaller agency, just myself and my board chair that can go. And I had 9 staff members that attended, and they loved it. So their answer, I think, is somewhere going to be, even when we return to whatever it is, I think that we're going to have to really notice that there is huge value in blended, and for what our teams can get out of that opportunity is just incredible.
I agree.
Thank you, Millette. Thank you for putting that plug in. And the good thing about it is those recordings are available for a whole year. And so anytime they have any questions, whether it's something HUD related or this or that, they can go back and watch it. So it's not just a one-time resource, but a continual resource throughout the year where they can connect and all that. So we're actually really enjoying that part of it. Go ahead.
I do have a question, Michael. Is this only for Texas Nahro members, or anybody can log into one of your recordings?
Anyone who pays the $99 registration fee can have access to all the videos.
Okay, good to know.
From the service office, we get a lot of the calls about, especially right now as we're pushing the 2021 membership drive, what's my money going towards? What's the benefits I get? And y'all touched on a lot of good ones. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is the advocacy that goes on. And I know we just had our big August push, but maybe you can talk about what that benefit is for agencies of all sizes.
Would you, is that for me?
Whoever wants it.
Well, I think to me, I'm a lot like Yvette. My heart is in professional development, not to take away from the other things, because they're all incredibly important. But I like to know that my team is doing their job well and effectively. But honestly, what I see Nahro as, networking, training, meeting members where they're at and getting them the tools that they need. But really, 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 it's advocacy. There are people out there who would like there to be no more housing authorities. There are people out there who would like our programs to be competitive grants, so that any nonprofit down the street could apply to do the work that we do. So I'm a little territorial of my work. I think that housers do this work the best of anybody that could, and quite frankly, it scares me to think that a whole voucher program could just be turned over to another entity. The problems that could happen with that. So we are continually at the national level advocating and trying to be aware of what it is, what the talk is that's on the Hill. And we have very, very connected staff. So they hear when I first started going to DC, before any of my elected officials would actually see me, I was very disenchanted, because sometimes the only people that would see me would be the staffers. Nahro coached me that that's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing, because the ones that are driving decisions are those staffers. It's that 28-year-old with an MBA who their only focus is housing, and so they're helping your elected official to form an opinion on your issues. So advocacy is critical. I talked about the CARES Act, that you get, you got money in your pockets from that. Regulation reform, and for all agencies, Michael, I think you said no matter the size, right? So when we're looking at our August advocacy letters that we send out, they hit on everything, and we advocate for each other, because our voices are stronger when they're united and they're together. For example, I don't have the opportunity in my state to get tax credits. That's just the way our state is set up. But you can bet that I'm going to send in my letters, and I'm going to answer the call to service when there's an issue about tax credits, because it's my colleagues. I partner with my colleagues, and so my voice goes with them. Small agencies, we got some small agency work passed through. We got an entire section of the code. Now, it may not be full yet, it's not full, but we got a section of code that is specific to small agencies. That just doesn't happen, but it did. And it happened because of advocacy. And it didn't happen because just Sunny advocated, or Yvette, you know, from on the small agency task force advocated. It happened because we all advocated together, and that included some big hitters who were big agencies but said, doesn't matter to me. If it happens to one, it happens to all. We're in this together. So we advocate together. So no matter the size of agency, no matter your issue, we advocate together. Our voices are powerful. You know, I can remember when during August advocacy, we would hope we would send 1,200 letters. This year in August, we sent 12,000 letters. And the fact of the matter is, they don't necessarily like read the whole letter. We know that. They're just looking for the topic. And so there's somebody looking through the letter and they're doing a hash mark, doing a hash mark, doing a hash mark. And at the end of the week, the leadership for that particular office is saying, what we hear a lot about this week? And they're going, oh my gosh, it's housing. We're hearing a lot about housing, 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 housing. So advocacy matters. And when they're getting more than just one letter, it's a big deal. That's why Nahro is so important as your partner on that advocacy level, because they make it so we can do grassroots. It's not just a person in an office in DC who's doing it. You are doing it. It's grassroots. So they're getting letters from someone in their own district, and they're going to listen more to somebody from their district than somebody that's not in their district that's asking them to do something. So I think when I'm talking about your dollars for your membership, I think right there is the power hitter. That's the secret sauce that Nahro has, is being able to unite us all in voices to be able to advocate for all of our programs. That's my 2 cents, or 50.
Good job.
And that's the argument we use for people to join Texas Nahro. Not that they can't join the other housing association that's here, but the difference between the two. And I think pretty much due to Beverly, we've started trying to share our advocacy resources like Jean Reed and some of them, to get them to understand how important it is for them to send those letters and to do that advocacy too, even if they aren't our members, because in the end, what affects them affects us. So I would say that also, that's been a real strong piece. Beverly and Yvette, you guys, I'm sure I've had the same sort of discussion about THA.
Mm-hmm. I
Yes.
just, like 2 weeks ago, I've got a couple of new directors in my area. We're very rural, very small towns. And one of them asked me, she's like, which one should I join? And I said, both. She said, but why? I said, well, we all live in a town with one grocery store. It's essential. We have to have it. We go there, we get our, our day-to-day things. But then ever so often we travel 75 miles and we may go to Albertsons or Brookshires or HEB, and we get the stuff you can't get here. We get the good avocados. We get the things you can't get at the store because those stores are national chains. They have their own store brands. I mean, it takes both. I said, neither one needs to go away. They're both highly essential. So join both. Take what you need from the state one. Get your staples, what you need, support it. But then recognize that the national chains are where you can get things that you can't get. So join both, support both and take what you need. But, as far as trainings, things like that, look at the value, look at the credibility, look who's doing the training, look at the handouts. Did somebody copy them, and just give them to you because they've been the director for a long time, or have they been through those policy riders? Has somebody looked at that test like Sunny was talking about, and is that test, been approved? So that's my answer to people that ask. Do both, but recognize which ones you get the cream from.
All right, y'all. So we're getting to the last about 10 minutes or so. So let's do some closing thoughts. If someone's come to you right now and, they're a new executive director, what would you tell them in a short conversation of why they should join Texas Nahro, National Nahro, whatever? What's your number one?
For me, it would be training and credibility. Join your NAROs for that value, that benefit. Beverly?
Usually push legislative and advocacy as you're only going to get that as a part of a national organization.
I think that, I'm going to combine what they both said. I'm just going to say Nahro is your home. Nahro is your home for all of that. And so come on in and join the family.
And I do want to point out, we was talking about committees at the very beginning of the session. All committee meetings are open. So whether they're in person or they end up being a virtual thing, you see a committee, you can look on our webpage at our bylaws and things and read about it, but you're welcome to pop in, and if it ignites, you get a little fire and it's a little bit exciting, stay with that committee. If it's not your cup of tea, pop into the next committee meeting. You're always welcome, whether you're a member or you're a guest. But feel free to join us.
And I think the one thing that wasn't mentioned was that I think that people should join because of the knowledgeable support they get from the other members. And that's at any level.
Barbara, you've been around for a while.
I think I enjoy the networking because it's always interesting to hear how other people have a totally different take on the same program that you're doing, but they have a different way of handling it, or they found a resource that you haven't used before, or a process that you haven't thought about. I always learn something by talking to other people.
Me too.
All right. Any last minute questions? Anyone have a burning desire to know something?
Okay, let's start at the top. Megan, what committee do you want to be on? I'm signing you up. No.
Let me
There's
get back
an
to you.
opening in the scholarship committee.
We're going to make some presidential appointments here. No, just kidding, but we'd love to have any of you, all of you.
Thank you so much for welcoming all of us. We appreciate it.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Thanks for
Bye,
joining us.
Barbara.
Problem.
Barbara, I'm going to be calling you in a month or two.
Okay, I'll be ready.
Okay. Thank you guys for
Bye.
having me. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sunny.